What did you find hiding in your child's closet and couldn't unsee? A list, just a piece of notebook paper, but at the top it said people who know. Underneath my name was written. And a date, yesterday's, in my 9-year-old's handwriting. It wasn't a game, it wasn't pretend. I know that sounds irrational, especially to anyone who doesn't have kids, but if you've ever truly looked at your child and felt that hard jolt of dissonance, the realization that they're not just small, innocent versions of you, but other capable of thoughts and secrets that don't belong to anything you taught them, then maybe you'll understand why I couldn't just laugh it off. Let me back up. My son's name is Matthew, 9 years old, quiet, kind of bookish but not withdrawn. He's the kind of kid who lines up his action figures before bed like they're preparing for a parade, loves dinosaurs, hates peas, a little scared of thunder, no history of behavioral issues, no trouble at school. He's always had this way of speaking that's just slightly too formal for his age. Like he rehearses everything he says before saying it. His teachers think it's charming, I think it's rehearsed. That night started like any other. Homework, dinner, a little TV. He went up to bed at 8:30. I usually check on him once he's asleep, a habit that's probably more for me than him. But when I creaked open the door around 9:15, he wasn't in bed. Not at his desk, not in the bathroom. I found him sitting in the closet. Not hiding, not scared, just sitting, cross-legged, hands on his knees, eyes closed, like he was meditating. He didn't move when I called his name, didn't respond when I tapped his shoulder. It took a full 30 seconds before he opened his eyes and looked at me. And the first thing he said in a perfectly calm voice was, "You're early." I didn't know what to say to that. I knelt down, tried to laugh it off. "What do you mean I'm early?" He blinked. "You usually don't come until after 10. I thought I'd have more time." "To do what?" He hesitated, then said, "To finish remembering. Now look, I'm a rational person. I'm not into ghosts or past lives or dream premonitions or any of that." But there was something in his tone, something completely unchildlike that made my throat tighten. I asked, remembering what? He looked down. Then he said something I still don't understand. "I can't tell you yet. If you know too early, it resets the order." I didn't press. I didn't yell. I just picked him up, tucked him in, kissed his forehead and tried to go back downstairs and pretend everything was fine. But I couldn't because that phrase, "it resets the order," stuck with me like a splinter in my brain. It didn't sound like something he would say, not even something he could say. It sounded procedural, clinical, like he was quoting. I went back up an hour later, after he was asleep. I don't know why, call it instinct. Call it paranoia. I opened his closet. At first I didn't see anything, just clothes, shoes, a few old puzzles. But when I pushed some of the boxes aside, I found something taped to the inside wall, way in the back, a single sheet of lined paper. A list, handwritten, childish scrawl, but deliberate at the top in big letters, people who know. And under that, 4 names. Jamie crossed out. Mrs. Levens crossed out. Me, Dad, blank space, blank space. Beside each name a date. Mine was yesterday's. Jamie's date was from 3 weeks ago. Mrs. Levens. I recognized the name. She was a substitute teacher who covered his class last month. I remembered because he came home that week unusually quiet. I asked how school was and he just said she was wrong, wouldn't elaborate. I thought maybe she'd said something to upset him. I didn't think she'd end up on a list crossed out. I took the list downstairs, sat with it under the kitchen light for nearly an hour. Every few minutes I'd glance at the baby monitor, half expecting to see him just standing in the doorway. Watching, he never came. But at exactly 11:13 p.m., the closet door creaked shut, no windows open, no air, just a single sound upstairs, as if someone had finished reading something and decided it was time to move on. I didn't sleep that night. Not well, at least. I kept replaying the way he looked at me, not scared, not confused, just aware, like he was waiting for something, or checking whether I'd noticed it yet. That look had weight. In the morning I asked him if he remembered sitting in the closet. He nodded without looking up from his cereal. "Why?" I asked. He shrugged. "It's quiet in there. What were you remembering?" He paused, then said so casually it made my skin prickle. "The things before this." I tried to laugh. "You mean before this house?" He looked at me then, chewing slowly as if the question was more complicated than it sounded. "No," he said, "before here. Before now." That same feeling hit me again, like a dropped elevator. The sense that you've walked in on a scene halfway through and everyone else knows the script. I didn't push further. Just let him finish eating, but when he left for school, I went straight back upstairs. I needed to know what else he was hiding. The closet was empty this time. No new lists, no drawings, nothing taped to the walls, but the boxes had been moved. He'd pushed his old toy bin into the corner. Behind it, I noticed a small seam in the drywall, subtle, but just enough to suggest something had been removed, or added. I pressed against it. Hollow. I got a flashlight and shined it around the edges. And that's when I saw it, a tiny hole, like the kind you'd drill to insert a small screw or tack, but inside it was black. Not just shadow black, empty black. Like the light refused to enter, I pressed my ear against the wall. Silence. Then a hum, not mechanical, not musical, just tonal. Like a tuning fork, so low you felt it more than heard it. I pulled away, heart pounding. I didn't tell anyone about the wall. That afternoon when he got home from school, I asked about the other names on the list. I tried to make it sound like a joke. Hey, what's this about a list in your closet? He didn't look up from his backpack, was just keeping track of what? People who figured it out. Figured what out? He zipped his bag closed and walked into the kitchen. Said over his shoulder, "It doesn't matter now." They're gone, that word. Gone. Kept echoing. I googled the substitute teacher. Mrs. Levens, nothing came up, no local listings, no obituary, no Facebook, no school district mentions. I even asked another parent at pickup the next day, "Hey, do you remember that sub they had last month?" Mrs. Levens, blank stare. "I don't think they had one. Mr. Carter's been there every day, but I remember her. I remember her name being on the weekly update email. I remember Matthew saying she gave too much spelling homework. Now it's like she never existed." And Jamie. I had to dig through old birthday photos to even confirm that he had a friend named Jamie, a little red-headed boy. Same age, seen in at least 3 of the pictures from last year's party. But I scrolled through my phone, checked my messages. No texts to or from any Jamie's parents, no school contact list entry. Nothing. Like the photos were the only record he'd ever been there. Like someone had scrubbed the timeline, but missed a few crumbs. That night I found another note, tucked into the binding of one of Matthew's books, just a ripped square of paper folded into fourths, on one side a series of numbers. 03, 14, 22, 06, 27. On the other, in order, they fall out of order, they repeat. Keep watching. The handwriting wasn't his, it wasn't mine either. And it was written in ink I'd never seen in the house, reddish black like old blood. I took it downstairs, scanned it, ran it through a date checker. It wasn't random. They were all dates, in the last 5 years. On each of those days something odd had happened. 03, Matthew sleepwalked for the first time. 14, he drew a maze with no exit in his notebook. 22, he refused to speak for 6 hours, and when he did, he claimed he'd already said everything. 06, he burned his own name into the grass using a magnifying glass. Backwards. 27, he told his grandmother on the phone that she wouldn't last past the edit. She died 3 weeks later. I showed the note to no one. I kept it in my wallet, like it might do something horrible if I threw it away. The list in the closet had changed again. 2 days later, I checked on a hunch. The names were now burned, not written, into a small piece of cardboard, taped behind the back wall panel. Same heading, people who know. This time, my name wasn't crossed out, it was underlined. Beneath it, a new entry had been added. Mom unconfirmed. That's when I realized I hadn't told my wife any of this. Not the humming, not the closet, not the teacher, not the note. It wasn't fear that kept me from sharing, it was instinct. Like I knew that involving her would change the trajectory. Like she'd either accelerate something I couldn't control or break it entirely. And maybe I wasn't ready for either. That night, around 3:40 a.m., I woke up to a sound I've never heard before or since. Not a scream, not a bang. It was a kind of crack like the sound drywall makes when it splits. But deeper, heavier, like something inside the house had shifted. I ran to Matthew's room, empty, bed made, closet door wide open, no sign of him. I started to panic, heart racing, calling his name through the house, out into the yard, down the block, nothing. I came back inside and stood in his room, not sure what to do, and then the closet door closed itself slowly, deliberately, and a new list slid out from beneath it, typed, laminated at the top in bold letters, final cycle, observed subjects, Matthew primary, Dad integrated, Mom dormant, Jamie dissolved, Levens rejected. At the bottom in tiny font, closet open equals false, memory wall holding equals 64%, exit blocked pending event 5. I fell to my knees because I remembered event 5. It hadn't happened yet, but I remembered it. And it ends with fire. I didn't remember falling asleep. One moment I was kneeling in Matthew's room holding that laminated list, and the next, I was waking up on the couch downstairs, sunlight pouring through the blinds like it had been waiting for me. The list was gone, so was Matthew. And for a second, just a second, I convinced myself I'd dreamed it all. That's how denial works, fast, efficient, surgical. But then I looked at the coffee table. There, in perfect symmetry, were 5 objects. A paperclip, a burnt match, a small perfectly round stone, a Band-Aid used, and the photo of our family from last Christmas, except my face was missing, not blurred. Gone like someone had sliced me out with an invisible knife. The rest of the picture was untouched, and the strange part, my wife never noticed it was missing. I asked her, she laughed. "Of course you're in it," she said. "You're right there." I asked her to show me the one on her phone, same picture, my face was there. Only the print version had been altered. But when I looked closer I saw something else. A faint reddish indentation along the edge of the photo, like someone had written on the back, and pressed too hard. I flipped it over. in pencil carved deep into the paper. This is the version where you forget first. I started keeping notes after that. Not in a notebook, too easy to tamper with. I wrote on my arms, on the inside of my shirts, on post-its stuck to the underside of drawers. Phrases that would only make sense to me. Ask about room 9. Check the mirror for lag. If he hums, don't speak. Don't let her cook eggs on Monday. Look for the false wall behind him. If you see the swing move, run. Each phrase had weight, each felt like something I'd learned the hard way, because I had, but I didn't remember when. The next time the closet door opened on its own, I was ready, sort of. It was 7 a.m. I was watching a live baby monitor feed, not because I expected anything, but because I'd stopped trusting my own senses. The camera was aimed at the closet. I wasn't looking at the screen when it happened. I heard it. A soft, slow creak. Like someone opening the door just far enough to peek out. I looked. The door was ajar. No sign of Matthew, but in the small slice of black I could see something shifting, not moving, just changing, like a lens slowly unfocusing. I blinked, and for a second I saw myself standing inside the closet, but younger, maybe 10 years younger, wearing a shirt I hadn't owned in years, smiling and holding something in his hands. I couldn't make it out, but I knew what it was. The original list, the first one, the one I hadn't written yet. The next morning, I found the following message carved into the inside of the kitchen cabinet. Not written, carved. Deep, trembling marks, like whoever made them didn't want to be interrupted. Your version is closer than it should be. Stop recording. Stop remembering. The closet isn't a place. It's a chance. You've used too many. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone trying to take a picture. When I checked the photo later, the words weren't there, just wood grain. Matthew started speaking differently. Not like a different voice, not creepy or demonic, just out of rhythm. He'd pause mid-sentence like buffering. Or he'd laugh before the joke. Or he'd answer questions I hadn't asked yet. Example, I came into his room one day with a basket of laundry. He looked up from his desk and said, "You shouldn't open the drawer." I hadn't said a word yet. "What drawer?" I asked. He pointed at his dresser. Of course I opened it. Inside, a row of folded drawings, all dated, all labeled, one for each day of the past 3 weeks. Each one showed a scene from the house, the kitchen, the living room, his room, even our bedroom, and each drawing had one thing in common. A figure in the background, always slightly different, always out of focus, sometimes wearing a coat, sometimes blurry, but always watching, always in the same spot, about 4 feet behind whoever was in the picture. I flipped through them like a flipbook, and in the last drawing I saw myself holding the laundry basket, and behind me, the figure, closer than ever, almost touching. I turned around. Nothing. But the mirror above the dresser, it fogged for a moment, like someone had just breathed on it. After the mirror fogged, I did something I haven't done in years. I cried, not a breakdown, not panic, just this quiet, slow leak of pressure I hadn't even realized I was holding. The kind of cry that doesn't come from fear, but from the recognition that you've already lost control, and everything you're doing now is reaction, not choice. I asked Matthew, "I don't know why, do you know who's in the pictures?" He was calm, too calm. "They're from the other side," he said. "Of what?" He pointed at the closet, not the door, he clarified. The line, that's when I realized he never referred to it as a place. Always concepts, directions before this. Too early. The line. The next day I called in sick, stayed home with him, kept things normal. We played a board game, watched an old cartoon, ate grilled cheese, and then as he was brushing his teeth that night he said, "Don't forget to check behind the washing machine." I froze. "Why?" He spit, wiped his mouth and said, "You left it there." That's why the memory's echoing. I waited until he was asleep, moved the machine carefully. Behind it, taped to the wall with black electrical tape, was a cassette, not labeled, not dusty. It looked recent. I still had an old player from my college days. I dug it out, popped in the tape, white noise, then a voice, my voice, panicked, breathless. "I don't know how many resets this is," the recording began. "But if you're hearing this, you've reached the wall again. Don't try to record over it. Don't try to warn the others. The more aware you become, the tighter it closes. Pause, you'll start to notice omissions, people removed, phrases repeated. The child is the anchor. They can't remove him, not yet. You built him that way, you gave him the fail-safes. But the fail-safes are dissolving. That's what the dreams are." Longer pause. "If you're not sure this is real, look for the smell of violets. It always starts there. That's the bleed-through." Click. End of tape. I leaned back, dizzy. Smell of violets. 3 weeks earlier when Matthew had that nightmare and I rushed into his room. There was a floral scent hanging in the air. I assumed it was from the detergent. But we hadn't used scented detergent in months. And that wasn't the only time. Once in the car, once in the bathroom, once under the floorboards. Each time something strange followed. I started checking my own notes, the ones I'd left around the house. Half of them were gone. One had been replaced with a different message, same handwriting. "You're writing too early. The edits can't hold. Another note was missing entire words, as if someone had erased specific concepts from my memory through the paper itself. A third had been rewritten in a different style, more deliberate. Less afraid, it read. She knows now. You didn't mean for it, but it's done. She'll pretend not to. That's part of the lag. But when she offers you tea, don't drink it. She's trying to close the loop. I hadn't even told you about the tea yet, had I? My wife, she never drinks it. She's a coffee person, always has been. But 3 nights ago she brought me chamomile. Smiling, calm, I drank it. That was the night I lost 4 hours and woke up in the garage. I confronted her the next morning, asked her directly, "Why did you give me tea?" She looked confused. "You asked for it," she said. I never asked for tea," but I didn't argue. Instead, I checked her side of the closet, found nothing, until I lifted her winter coat taped inside the lining. Another list, this one typed title, Remaining Variables, Round 4. It had 3 categories, active, passive, unaware. My name was in active, Matthew's was in passive, and hers, unaware, with a question mark beside it, as if someone wasn't sure whether she still believed her own part. At the bottom, in bold, closet countdown, 3 entries left before bleed-through reaches 78%. Decision fork required. Memory gate unstable. Suggestions, dissolve, split, or blend. I didn't understand most of it, but dissolve chilled me to my core, because Jamie was listed as dissolved, so was Levens, so was someone named Ben I don't even remember ever knowing, and yet his name felt oddly familiar. Like a song lyric you can't quite place. That night Matthew came to me quietly, while I was writing more notes inside a paperback. He said, "We're getting close to the echo point." I asked what that meant. He just said, "That's when they start repeating what you're thinking, not what you're saying, not yet. Just the thoughts. Who are they?" He didn't answer, but as he walked away he whispered, "You used to be one of them. That's why they can't dissolve you." After Matthew said that I used to be one of them, I didn't sleep for 3 days. Not really. I doze, jerk awake, find myself standing in different rooms of the house without remembering walking there. The lights would flicker when I passed mirrors. Electronics started malfunctioning, not breaking, just echoing. I'd speak, and for half a second I'd hear my voice again, delayed by a moment, coming not from the room but from inside the walls. I tried to leave the house, not permanently, just to clear my head. I got in the car, started the engine, made it to the end of the block, and found myself back in the garage, keys still in hand. 32 minutes had passed. No memory of turning around. No memory of reparking, nothing on the dash cam. I watched the footage. It showed me driving to the edge of the block, stopping at the stop sign, and then the frame glitched, just a flicker, a single frame, and suddenly, I was parked back inside the garage. Like the system cut and pasted the beginning to the end. Matthew was standing in the corner of the garage when I noticed the jump. He just said, "You're not allowed to leave during sync." What sync? He shook his head. "If you remember, they'll move it up. You don't want that." That night I opened the closet again. There was a light coming from behind the drywall, faint, greenish, pulsing, not electrical, not normal. It was coming from a space that, according to the blueprints of the house, shouldn't exist. I pushed against the panel. It moved, opened into a narrow passage no more than 2 feet wide. I crawled inside. The smell hit me first. Violets again, but sourer, older. Like the memory of violets, the hallway was short, ending in a small cubicle chamber, no furniture, just a chair. And on the chair an audio recorder cassette, another one, labeled "Do Not Play Unless Alone." I played it. This time the voice wasn't mine, it was Matthew's, younger. Maybe 5 or 6 years old. He spoke slowly. "If you're here, then it's happening again. You shouldn't have come this far. The closet isn't a doorway. It's a mirror. It shows you the structure, not the truth. You're remembering versions that never resolved. That's dangerous." Pause. "Ask her about the photo, the one she keeps in the Bible, the one where your eyes are missing." The tape ended. I left the passage, checked my wife's nightstand. Her Bible was there. Inside it, tucked between Psalms and Proverbs, was a photo I'd never seen. Our wedding, but my eyes in the picture, they were blacked out with marker-thick, vicious strokes. Beneath the photo, on a torn piece of a receipt, he doesn't see it yet, but they always come back. I finally asked her, "Where did this photo come from?" She didn't flinch, just said, "You gave it to me." "No, I didn't." She looked me in the eye, and for just a second, a fraction of a second, I saw it. Something else looking back, not like possession, not like in the movies, just a slight delay between her expression and her voice, like whatever was behind the face was calculating how she should respond. "I'm tired," she said. "You're not sleeping well. You're making yourself sick." But her voice wasn't tired, it was rehearsed too perfect. I turned the lights off that night and waited. 3 a.m. Nothing. 3:47 a.m. I heard the closet creak. I didn't go to Matthew's room. Instead, I watched from the baby monitor app. The door opened wider than usual. From the dark, something stepped out. Not Matthew, not me. It was a figure in a hoodie, gray, thin, same height as me, but the face was wrong. No eyes, no mouth, just the hint of a face, like someone started sculpting it and stopped halfway. It walked to the edge of the bed, bent down, whispered something to Matthew, and Matthew nodded. I ran upstairs, room was empty, closet shut, but now the wall beside his bed had a word burned into the paint. 12. I counted back. 12 what? 12 days, 12 cycles, 12 resets. That night, I dreamed of the swing set behind our old house, the one we tore down when Matthew was born. Except in the dream it wasn't destroyed, it was swinging, and sitting on it was Jamie, red hair, blank stare, and he said one thing: "He's not your son this time. He's just the echo you remembered first." I woke up screaming. I ran to Matthew's room. He was drawing something. When I asked what it was, he didn't look up. "I'm almost done," he said. "What is it?" He showed me. It was a floor plan of our house, but wrong. There were extra rooms, hallways that didn't exist, a basement we didn't have, symbols drawn on the doors. "What are these?" "Labels," he said. "They help keep the loops separate." "What loops?" He finally looked up. "You'll know when you see the other me." The next morning I woke up in my car. It was parked outside a house I didn't recognize. Suburban, gray, generic, the kind of place you drive past 1,000 times without noticing. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no text, battery at 3%. I didn't remember driving, didn't remember leaving. When I looked up, Matthew was standing on the porch of the house, barefoot, in pajamas, holding a drawing. I got out and approached slowly. The door behind him was open. Not wide, just a crack, but the smell coming from it. Violets again, faint but unmistakable. He handed me the paper without a word. It was a picture of me, lying in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. But in the drawing, my reflection in the mirror didn't match. In the mirror, I was smiling. Inside the house, things were wrong, off in a subtle, stomach-twisting way. Furniture just slightly too small, walls curved where they should have been flat, a clock on the wall that ticked backwards. Matthew walked through like he'd lived there his whole life. He led me to a room at the end of the hall. Inside, another closet. This one was sealed with a line of salt across the bottom. 3 locks, a handwritten sign taped above it that said, "Do not let him open it again." I asked, "Who wrote that?" Matthew said, "You did." Last time, I didn't ask what was inside. I already knew, not the specifics. Not the thing, but the function. That closet was the epicenter, the line, as he'd called it. The membrane where memory stops being memory and starts being instruction, where the echoes start to write back. I checked the walls. They were covered in drawings. Not childish ones, detailed, precision, blueprints, sequences, timelines in the center, a diagram of our family, but split into layers, like geological strata, us in different years. Different houses, same events slightly shifted, recurring phrases like sink decay and mother drift and loop splits. At interaction point 4 I was listed as carrier, my wife, shell, Matthew, primary vessel, stabilized and beside Jamie's name. Remove trailing trace exists. That's when I heard the door creak behind me. I turned. It was my wife. She didn't say anything, didn't look angry or scared. She looked tired, like she'd finally reached a moment she'd been avoiding. "I didn't want it to be this version," she said. "What version?" She stepped into the room. The light didn't touch her. "This is the one where you remember the closet early, where you try to undo it." "Undo what?" She smiled. Sadly, the project, that word again, the same one she'd whispered weeks ago when she thought I wasn't listening. "They're a project." I asked her again, "What is the project?" She sighed. "Matthew was never supposed to survive this far. Not naturally. You were supposed to forget before the overlap. But you wrote it down." She knelt beside Matthew and kissed his head. "He holds the constants, but you hold the bleed." I took a step back. "I don't understand." "You do," she said. "You've just been denying it." Then she opened the closet inside. Nothing, just black, not darkness, absence. The light from the hallway didn't penetrate. Matthew walked toward it. I tried to stop him. She held me back. "If you pull him now," she said, "you become the anchor again. You know what that does." He turned around. In that moment, his face changed, flickered like an old television signal cutting out, and I saw him not as a child, but as a pattern. A set of repeated decisions, behaviors, routines, the exact same doodles year after year, the same questions, the same answers. He wasn't evolving, he was playing a role, replaying a script written by me. And then the closet whispered, no sound, no words, but a whisper felt inside the bones, like pressure in your skull and behind my eyes. I saw the wall, the one I broke through in the first closet, but this time there was writing etched into it. "You made him because you couldn't unmake yourself. You wrote him into the gap. You folded the guilt into the architecture." I dropped to my knees because I remembered the real Matthew, the one who never came home, the one who died in the backyard that night, chasing a ball into the woods. No one saw it, no one heard it, just gone. And I broke fully, utterly, but not into grief, into construction, because in the months that followed I rebuilt him, not physically. Not with magic, but with pattern, with ritual, with obsession. I wrote lists, I encoded behavior, I trained myself to forget, just long enough to let the structure stabilize, and then I let the new version grow. But now the loops were failing, the walls were cracking, the bleed was worsening. because I'd remembered too much, because I opened the wrong doors, because I'd recorded too many truths. The woman, my wife, she wasn't her either. She was the stabilizer. Her presence kept the structure consistent, but now she was destabilizing too, she whispered, just before stepping into the closet herself. Let this be the last. I was alone in the house, except I wasn't. Because the drawings were still here, and they had changed. In one of them, I saw me drawing this very scene, and the caption below said, "He tells the story again, because it keeps him from hearing the silence." I didn't sleep that night, didn't even try. The house felt quieter somehow. But not in a comforting way. The quiet wasn't absence, it was expectation. Like the house was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. Every light in the house began to dim imperceptibly over the course of the night, not burn out, withdraw, as if even the power source itself didn't want to be part of what was coming. I kept walking through the rooms, not searching, not fleeing, just circling. Like a mouse in a maze that already knows the cheese isn't real. At 4:11 a.m., I heard a knock. Not at the front door, at the closet, just 2 knocks, slow, calm, patient. I went upstairs, expecting to find Matthew gone again. But he was in bed, asleep, or pretending. I stepped closer. His breathing was too even, his body too still, like a loop, running the same short clip over and over. The baby monitor screen glitched, his image froze, then blinked out, then returned, except the version on the screen had his eyes open. But in bed he still looked asleep. I blinked, and now both had their eyes open, staring straight at me. I dropped the monitor, turned away. And the closet was open. Inside, standing motionless, was a man my height, my build, wearing a coat I used to own years ago. Lost in a move, he raised his hand and pointed at the wall behind me. On it, written in red marker, shaky and rushed, "You can still choose the other ending." He stepped back into the closet and the door closed on its own. Later that morning, I got in the car again. This time, I didn't try to drive away, I just sat in the driveway. The radio turned itself on, no station, just static, and then a voice, robotic, chopped, spliced, spoke. "This is not the version where you win, this is the version where you see it." I got out and walked behind the house, into the woods, and there, I found the old swing still standing, still creaking in the wind, and beneath it, a box, metal, bolted shut. I dug around it. Found a note under a stone, handwritten, familiar handwriting, mine. "Don't open this unless you're ready to remember why." I opened it. Inside, a photo of Jamie, age 6, a cassette, a list, and a small hand-stitched doll made of fabric scraps and wire. One eye missing, burn marks on the legs. I took the tape and played it right there on the old Walkman. A child's voice spoke. "You made me so you wouldn't have to bury him." I dropped the recorder. When I got home, the house was wrong again. The walls felt closer, the kitchen clock was ticking normally now, but the hands were gone. The basement door was open, a door we hadn't had before, and from it I could hear a looped voice saying, "Do you want to keep playing this version, over and over?" I went to Matthew's room. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor. Around him, dozens of drawings. But this time they weren't of the house, they were of me, each one slightly different. In one, I was holding a knife. In another, I was watching TV, but the reflection in the screen showed me looking back over my own shoulder. In a third, I was asleep, but the version of me standing beside the bed was wearing the same clothes I had on now. I asked him, "What are these?" He didn't look up. "They're all possibilities. You keep running the same ones. Why?" "Because you think one of them ends better." I felt dizzy. "I don't understand. Are you really him?" He looked up, his eyes glitched, just for a second. "I'm whoever you wrote in to carry it when you couldn't." I didn't know what I expected when I asked him again, "Are you Matthew?" He shrugged. "I was. He put down the last drawing and said something I'll never forget. "You made me from what you could still remember. But not everything you remembered was real." It felt like the house exhaled, like the walls were listening. I spent the next few days cataloging, trying to anchor myself, writing down facts, my name, my job, my wife's maiden name, my birthday. Each time I read the notes back, something felt off. Not wrong, just too clean, too convenient, too written. I looked at old family videos, except we didn't have any before Matthew turned 5. No baby footage, no birthdays, no hospital bracelets, no ultrasound, just pictures. Still photos, and in every one, I was the one holding the camera. No one ever filmed me. One night I checked my work laptop. Just to feel something normal, I opened the browser, typed Matthew, my last name, nothing, no school records, no pediatrician visits, nothing until 2021, even though we'd had him since 2016, even though I remember changing diapers, sleep training, kindergarten tours. It was all gone, or maybe it was never there. I called the pediatrician's office, hoping to find a paper trail. The receptionist asked for the patient's date of birth. I gave it. Long pause. She said, "Sir, I'm not showing anyone by that name with that birthday." I gave Matthew's full name. She said, "I'm sorry. Are you sure you're calling the right clinic?" My chest got tight. "I've brought him in 5 times. He had ear infections. Dr. Ramirez, we haven't had a Dr. Ramirez in 4 years." I hung up and I sat in silence. I didn't tell my wife. She didn't ask why I was pale, why my hands were shaking. She just kept stirring the soup, calm, rehearsed. I tried to act normal, tried to not look at her hands, because I was sure in that moment they were too perfect, too symmetrical, like something sculpted, not grown. That night I waited until they were both asleep, and I went back into the closet, not the hidden passage, just the closet. I sat there in the dark, and I whispered, like I had in a dream I didn't remember having, I give up the echo, I give up the rewrite. I accept the first draft. The air shifted, and behind me, something clicked, not loudly, just deliberately. I turned. There on the floor was the doll I'd found weeks ago, the hand-stitched one, burned and eyeless, except now it had both eyes, and it was pointing at something under the floorboard. I lifted the panel. There, wrapped in an old towel, was a USB stick. I plugged it into an old laptop, half expecting it to fry the system. Instead, a single video file, no title. I opened it, and there I was on screen, filming myself, sitting in this very closet, tears in my eyes, same sweater I wore the day Jamie disappeared. And I said, if you're watching this, then you've made it back to the point of no return. You've started to unravel the edits. You've made contact with the shell. You've seen the shadow. But before you go further, you need to remember what you did. My recorded self took a shaky breath. Jamie died. Not from an accident. Not from illness, from neglect, from me. Silence. I was drunk. I was tired. I was yelling. And he ran, and I didn't follow, because I was angry, because I wanted to teach him a lesson. He got lost, and they found him 2 days later. I felt the air leave my lungs. You couldn't handle that. So you created Matthew, not out of thin air, not magically. You built him with behavior, with routines. You taught your wife how to treat him. You gaslit yourself into thinking he'd always been here. You buried the body in the basement of the version of you who never let Jamie go. And now you're both bleeding through. The video glitched, then ended. I stared at the screen. No tears came, because I wasn't shocked, not really. Because I'd known, on some level. I had always known Matthew wasn't real. He was what I needed to function again, to get out of bed, to not put a bullet in my mouth. He was the story I told myself. And now the story was unraveling. I went to his room. He was awake, sitting up, waiting. You watched it, he said. I nodded. I'm sorry, I said. He nodded. It's okay. I was tired. What happens now? He looked down, then up again. You let go. How? You remember me, not the role. He walked up to me, put his tiny hand on my chest. Don't replace me again. And then he was gone. No sound, no light, just absence. I screamed. I sobbed. I punched the wall, but nothing came back. The room was empty. My wife came in minutes later, asked what happened. I told her everything. She listened, quiet, still. Then she said we both needed him, and we sat on the floor holding each other in silence. That was 4 months ago. There's no more swing set in the backyard, no closet noises, no lists. But sometimes, when the house is quiet, I still smell violets, and I find myself reaching for the notebook I no longer keep. And I wonder, if you erase enough truth to survive, do you become the lie? I don't know if Matthew was ever real, not in the way you define real. But he mattered. He mattered enough to hold us together, long enough to face the end. And maybe that's all any of us really are, echoes of who we were, held together by the people who remember us kindly, even when we don't deserve it.